It's great to have you back. It's still Rise and Shine, and you're onto the Talking Point segment of the show. And right now we have our guest in the studio, and today, basically, is being celebrated world over or commemorated world over as World Consumer Rights Protection Day. And I have in the studio a gentleman, an associate professor of law at the University of Oyo, and President Consumer Rights and Product Safety Initiative in the person of Dr. Tefia Ekanam to discuss this issue with me. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, the world over is celebrating World Consumer Rights Protection Day. First of all, before we go into what the day is about, what exactly are consumer rights?
Consumer rights are those rights that everyone enjoys. Everyone who consumes services and products. We say everyone because everyone living has to consume
Something.
to be sustained. So, to that extent, everyone is a consumer. It is, irrespective of what the person does, as long as that person is living, is a living being, he's a consumer. Now, the question, basic consumer rights. All right, there are basically about 7 of these rights. Rights to value for money.
Okay.
Everyone should have right to have value for his money. Rights to safety, rights to information, right to choose, that is right of choice, right to redress, right to consumer education, and rights to representation. I don't know, if I may just go through them.
Okay, you want to? Okay.
Now, the first one, rights to value for money. Everyone who spends money, either on goods or services, expects to have, has an expectation. That expectation is that he will have value for his money.
Money spent, yeah.
Money spent. So where he does not, that is not the case. His right has been infringed upon. The right to safety. Nobody goes to the market to purchase, to pay for a product or services that will cause him harm. Even where what he's purchasing is to be used for harm to another, for his own use, whatever he purchases for his own use is expected to, there's this idea of, I hope it will be safe for him or for whoever he's procuring it for, the right to information. Basically, the world thrives on information. And where a consumer, and for a consumer to make choice, for a consumer to decide on what to do with his money, he's entitled to information. Because what the producer or the service provider may be putting up may not meet up with what he wants, or he may have he may be in the position to consider that and feels he needs something either better or something different. It is only from the information available to him that he will be able to do that. So when a consumer is denied information, his right has been infringed upon. The right to choose. A consumer should have a right to decide, do I go for product A or product B? Can I take part of A and part of B? It shouldn't be something that is tied down and for him to swallow, hook down, sinker, just throw it at him. The moment that right is taken away from him, that his basic right has been infringed.
Just before you continue, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Now, would you say from your own point of view, from your standpoint, that the average Nigerian, his rights, consumer rights, are actually protected?
The rights are there. Basically, the rights are there. But our disposition as a people, where we hardly even care that these rights give a hoot. Now you can see an average Nigerian going to a filling station to buy product, for example, petroleum product, and the price is known to be, say for that particular product, 100 naira. While he's there, the pump price is adjusted, say to 150. He's in a hurry to buy. He buys it and off he goes without asking any question. So the average Nigerian does not even hardly knows advertisement to the existence of these rights. But for those that know, when from time to time when they raise it, I think to some extent, I'm saying to some extent, the mechanisms are there for them, for the rights to be enforced.
Okay, now you just said something which will bring me to my next question. You said one of the few things you said was one of the things I was going to ask anyway.
Yes.
What are the things militating against Nigeria and basic consumer rights in Nigeria? And you did make mention of one.
Yes.
Not knowing. Ignorance is one of them. And then again, you also mentioned some other part, the second part where you talked about the mechanism that are in place.
Yes,
how effective are those mechanisms? If someone calls for a redress and says, my right has been infringed in this, how does the person go about seeking a redress and all of that mechanism?
Yeah. The mechanisms are there. For example, the courts are there. We also have the commission. The commission is there. But first, let's look at those factors militating against it.
Yeah.
Access to this mechanism. For example, access to court. The commission is in Abuja. We were preparing to have a round table to mark this day, if not for the strike by academic staff. And we needed a representative of the commission. We realized that in the whole of Akwa Ibom, it is not there. We had to stretch our search to Rivers State, and we're now asked to go to reach out to Abuja. You see, these are some of which means, could it be that where someone's right is infringed and it needs to be to ask for redress, if he doesn't want to go to court? Going to court is a choice. The person might decide not to go to court. It should go to Abuja. Now, apart from that, there are internally, for example, one is in the marketplace and he realizes that he has an issue. Internally, he can discuss with the service provider. I went to buy products some time ago, and I realized that the price was not what was done anywhere. I removed my complimentary card. I wrote a note, and I gave it to the attendant to give to the owner of the business. Because I have no business with the attendant. The attendant is taking instruction from his boss.
That's right.
By the time I returned the next day, the price had been adjusted. I didn't see the person. Just the fact that someone knows that the wrong thing is being done and is speaking out, we don't speak out. We don't speak out. Now, that is on the one hand. Now, we have talked about distance.
Yeah. Somebody
in my say Ikolokpaden village, somewhere at Mbarane, buys say a bottle of say, a product, and he realizes that the product is not what he wanted, maybe quality, quantity, whatever, and he needs to. First, the person might think when he coming to you, he realizes that maybe he has to go to Abuja before his complaint, or maybe approaches a lawyer and all of those things. A lawyer getting involved and getting the complaint to Abuja, the expenses will be much. The law provides for having offices in states, but right now, I'm not sure the commission has not been able to do that. So that distance, it will have, to me, it appears as if there is a big gap between the consumers and the regulatory bodies. Well, let me also say this. Many Nigerians, for example, complain about what do you call this? About paying for services they don't get. For those of us who consume power, every month bills are given, whether they will spoil or not. I know a colleague who got to the service provider, provide me with meter. Until you do that, I will not pay for your services. And they came to disconnect him. He went to court. And the matter was in court for so many years. it got to the point that the service providers were the one begging, okay, let's settle. I did the same thing. I wrote to them, provide me with what do you call this meter? Prepaid meter. I am, if you want me to whatever, I'm okay. But I don't bring this your estimated thing to me anymore. And I was ready to go to court. I think to avoid that, considering that so one person who was around us was already in court and they were there for so many years. So while they were there in court, they could not have been, it couldn't be disconnected. So at that point, they couldn't even talk about, what do you call it, issue of pay. What's he going to pay? Until it was provided, if they tried to negotiate and ask, okay, we'll give you prepaid meters and all that. And that was how I also got mine. So
basically, the people have to speak up.
We have to wake up.
Act.
We have to wake up and act.
Nothing is done. Okay, now we'll take a short break right now and right here. When we come back, we're going to be looking at the import of World Consumer Rights Day. Please stay. Great to have you back. In case you're just joining in, this is the Talking Point segment here on Rise and Shine. And this conversation is live on social media, on Facebook, Instagram with the handle at SpectrumTv, and of course our website at www.spectrumtv.ng. I still have with me our guest in the studio, in the person of Dr. Tafia Ekanam, who is an associate professor of law at the prestigious University of Uyo, and we've been talking about consumer rights protection. And yes, indeed, today is being celebrated world over as World Consumer Rights Protection Day. And let's jump back into this conversation. What is the import of this celebration? I mean, the theme really is fair digital finance. So how that I'm trying to relate this with consumption of products and services.
All right. Every 15th of March, the world marks the World Consumer Rights Day. It is basically to create awareness of consumers' rights, for consumers to be reminded of their rights and that there are windows to ventilate their grievances. For this year, the theme is fair digital finances. Now, today, a lot of people carry out banking or financial transaction without necessarily walking to the banks. Some people who know, many, without any foreknowledge of how the internet works and all those things. The result is that people end up paying for services, but end up paying without knowing that they are paying for sometimes services they didn't know. And this is simply to create awareness that in the digital age, and particularly in financial transaction, which usually will involve commerce and all of those, that there should be fair play. When we look at, for instance, the relationship between the banker and the customer, the banker has all the laws with him. The banker knows how much the percentage of what should be deducted and services and all those. How many customers or consumers care to know about this? All the person cares is he goes to he tries to reach his money and he's paid. He doesn't even care. He hardly cares about how much he's paying for such services. Sometimes he even tries to access his funds and he's unable to do so. What effort was made to control? Before now, people there was this time people going to the bank would need to go with either pillows or mats, particularly in Nigeria, not knowing when they'll return. From the bank, But the queues now at some ATM points, which now one may begin to act. So this is just to create that awareness. You have your transaction, you need to ask questions. You need to sit down sometimes and go through, see what has been deducted. You can ask questions. This amount has been deducted from my account. What is it for? I realized that last month this was deducted, or last week this was deducted. Can I know why? And when one is not too clear, one may now talk to an expert who would either ask in writing for explanation or may get to the regulatory body.
Now, the challenge is majorly average Nigerians see these deductions and many times overlook it because it's almost insignificant. It's almost really small. But when it happens over a period of time, I think that's when they get concerned, especially if the frequency is high and the amount is steady. But at what point do you expect one to seek explanation from his bank, so to speak? Let's bring it down to the bank now. At what point does this one expected to go to his bank and find out exactly why certain deductions were removed or taken out from his account? We should also bear in mind that there are actually some legitimate deductions that should happen. What are those legitimate deductions, and what are the ones that we should be wary of?
Now, whenever there's a deduction in a client's a customer's account, he should be entitled to know what the deductions are for. What we are simply saying that, irrespective of how insignificant the amount is, he is entitled to knowing. Let me also say, look at this scenario. Sometimes one tries to carry out transactions and is debited, and is so much in a hurry, he tries again, and he doesn't even care whether is debited and the money not dispensed. If it is transfer, it's debited and the money has not been sent to the other end, and he just overlooks it. You see, these are what we are talking about. Let there be fair digital finance. Let there be fair digital dealings. Irrespective, we shouldn't just wait for the person to ask. Where this has happened, the person at the other end
should take
responsibility and try to rectify it. The laws are there. Where this happens, a report can be made. But like I've always said, the first point of report should be to the service provider. Draw his attention to it. And I must say, there are instances where, as soon as that was done, action was taken. A friend of mine, the husband bought her a phone, and within a few days, it developed problem, and she came complaining. She's a professor, and the advice was approach the service provider, and she went there. We got there, they didn't answer. Then we wrote to them, and she was invited. The phone was changed. Now, if she didn't complain, if she just said, "Oh, okay, and she would have gone to buy another." You see, we just spend money. The idea is, let us, in this digital age, let us be a little careful in our financial transactions. Let us ask some questions. Then on the other end, we should try to be fair. We should not effort should not be made to exploit the other party because we think he's ignorant of his rights.
Okay, so it's a two-way thing.
It's a two-way
thing. The consumer and the service provider.
The consumer should be on his toes to ensure that he's not exploited. Then fair trade practices expect that the other party, that is the businessman now, you can make your money trading, being fair. What the other man you are dealing with does not know, is ignorant, should not be exploited, even when there is competition.
Okay, now just before, when we started the show, you did take time to mention seven things that constitute
7 basic consumer rights.
Yeah, the rights, consumer rights. Now, you mentioned value for money, safety, information, and choice.
Yes.
And then there are other ones who didn't jump into redress. Now, let's look at redress.
Yes.
How does the average Nigerian go about redress? You did mention you can go to the service provider, but
Yes.
in many cases, these people act elusive, like they're not the ones that sold the item or provided the service. What do you do after that time?
Let me say this. The first thing we should even realize is, come to the consciousness, is the consciousness of demanding for receipts for transactions. You go in Nigeria, you go to somewhere to purchase, and after the agreement, you now ask for receipt. Sometimes someone feels, in this world, asking for receipts, because that is what the consumer would use to ask for that his rights be enforced. He gets back there and he said, well, we don't know you. He said, I bought this here. When? So we should learn to ask for receipt whenever we're involved in transactions. That's number one. Now, going back to ask, no service provider wants negative publicity. Every service provider does everything to avoid negative publicity. That is one thing the consumer needs to know. So, armed with the receipt, the consumer goes back, I got this here. This is your receipt you gave me for what I purchased, all the services paid for. There is a complaint, they will listen to you. Where the consumer fails to be attended to, consult an expert, consult a lawyer, and it will be written to. There's nothing wrong too in you writing to make your complaint. Now, there's something I keep on saying. When a service provider or a businessman loses one customer, that customer goes back, tells the story to another, and the story spreads. That will ultimately affect his business, and nobody wants to do that. Now, apart from that, there are also some, what do you call it? There are also some doors. The court is there. There are also some business regulatory, self-regulatory agencies. For example, let me give like for lawyers, you have the NBA. You have for I think the NMA for medical doctors. If somebody in these professions does something and you feel it has affected your right, and you try to sort it out with him, it's not possible, go to those professional bodies. Almost in every trade, almost in every profession, you have those people. Now, they will not want to attract bad publicity to themselves. So they will do everything to make sure that the redress is achieved. When that is not possible, then you may now move to the next one, maybe the regulatory agency.
Okay. All right. Now let's just study this out real quickly for the want of time. Let's look at the other two rights here. There's the consumer education
and representation.
Now let's talk about that education. How do we achieve consumer education? Is it like supposed to be something that comes with the product you're buying? Or is it something that is specific or specialized kind of information or education a consumer must have?
We can achieve consumer education by there should be that self-consciousness. What I do, for example, in my house, I've taught my children, for them to take any product, they'll look out for the expiry date. Even when they go to buy. Sometimes I don't even have that. They say, Daddy, have you checked the expiry date? Now, this can be taught. Consumer protection can be built into our curriculum at the primary school. Now, when they are taught at that level, it flows. They carry it up. And then, I think we have this course called civic education or something like that. I have the issues with social studies before and all those things. It can be built in there so that we do not have too many subjects. And the child is taught. Then amongst ourselves, that self-consciousness, I have a right. Then we need to talk about it. We need to engage ourselves. Today, I said, we in the Faculty of Law, University of York, we're going to have a round table That roundtable was to give us an opportunity to educate ourselves, to educate others, but for the strike. Because we won't do anything against. After the strike is for everyone. So that kind of engagement, but basically the level of consumer education in our country is very low. It is quite low.
And who do we task with the responsibility of educating these persons? The regulatory agencies or private individuals, or who exactly?
We all have roles to play.
The individual himself.
Consumer Protection Council has a role to play. Individuals have roles to play. What you call professional bodies have roles to play. NGOs have roles to play. We all have roles to play. I give you an example. An institution, for example, and let us say an institution, a firm, a school. There's nothing wrong in the institution letting those it deals with, in this case the student, to know about what to expect from the service providers, in this case the lecturers, the teachers, and all of those. There is nothing wrong in doing that. In doing that, we are really helping the system. We are helping the society. I think that on a day like this, everybody should be involved, even if it means creating an opportunity to just talk to the people you do business with, reminding them of their rights. It will go a long way in helping us. But you see, it's most times we even forget that we have days like this.
And that's really sad. But then let's look at the last one, the last right, consumer
rights to representation.
That part,
yes.
How does it work? Are we looking at having consumers represented at maybe specific panels, or so to speak? Same, for instance, in CPC, for instance, consumers are represented there as well to speak on behalf of the people, or is it just by way of writing?
Now, it includes what you have said.
Okay.
Having consumers' interests represented at those levels. But importantly, this right to representation here has to do with the consumers' inalienable right to have someone to represent him when he has an issue or when he has a complaint to make. The consumer mustn't necessarily be the one going to complain. He mustn't be the one going to complain. He can send that complaint through his representative. He has a right to choose who should represent him. So it is not a business of the service provider or the producer or the manufacturer to say it was not you I was dealing with. You are not the one who bought from us. In other words, there's no contract, there's no privity of contract between you and us. It was with your client, or it was with the person you are dealing with. So that even if when the matter goes to court, for example, he has a right to choose who should represent him. Even in relating with the person, the businessman whom it contracted with, he has a right to just say, okay, I did this, please go and represent me. That's what we are saying. He cannot be denied of that right. Oh, we will not deal with you. You are not the one that we are contracted with us.
Okay, so in other words, these rights are supposed to be respected and honored by all and sundry, as far as Nigerians' rights, consumer rights are concerned.
Any consumer feels that this right has not been, that any of these rights has been infringed upon or likely to be infringed upon, he can approach even the court, and the court will enforce it.
Okay, very well done. Could you your very last words right now, or final words, so to speak, to the average Nigerian consumer? What would you say to them with respect to what we're discussing this morning?
I would tell the average Nigerian consumer to know that he has rights, and that these rights are recognized all over the world, and that in his daily dealings, from commuting, moving, buying things around, in fact, even going entering a barbering salon or whatever, those rights must be respected. And where he is not sure that whether the right has been infringed upon or not, he can speak to someone, to an expert. He can even approach the service provider or the business person providing the services or the goods. He has a right to talk to him. You have to listen to him. When he is denied that right, he can write.
Okay. In case you're just joining in, we've been playing host to the Associate Professor of Law at the prestigious University of Uyo in the person of Dr. Tefia Kanam, who will shed a whole lot of light on today's subject matter, which had to be and related to the World Consumer Rights Protection Day. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the show. And we believe strongly that next we invite you would oblige us.
I've always been here, so whenever I'll be here.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.